I think the biggest thing is love the process, jump in the process. When we used to do the caterings at the Civic Center, we did this event. I want to say it was around like 3,000 people. And when you get done, like you literally have bus tubs of dirty dishes down the hall that you can't even see the end of it. But there's two different ways you can look at that. You can say this sucks, or you can enjoy it. Yeah. And that's what we all did.
Welcome to the MediaCore Minute Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Langmaid. I run a video production company based here in Minnesota. Today in the studio, we have Mr. Nick Powers. Nick Powers is the president of Powers Ventures. How are you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing well. First podcast ever.
Is it first time ever?
Ever.
That's awesome. Yeah, a lot of the guys, this is the first time, and like yesterday we were like, nope, it was my second. I'm like, well, I hope this one's better.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny. We try to drop them weekly, and I just had Jordan in yesterday, and he's got posted yesterday, and this will be the following Monday. But we were talking. I'm like, I'm trying to get a decent crowd on here, a little variety. But it's fun because a lot of our guys from our breakfast have been on now.
Yeah.
And I think you're like the last guy, and like we're gonna have everybody now that's on it, and we're like, well, maybe that's just the new like rite of passage. You have to go on the podcast before you can go to
get
the
invited.
breakfast.
Yeah. That's good. No, I've been super impressed, like I mentioned to you, on just how well this has been put together, and
Thank you.
Just a wide range of who you have on here. I've learned a lot. I mean, when you sent it to me, I listened to them, and yeah, just to hear the stories of people that I know, people that I know of, and people that I don't know, it's just been really cool.
It's kind of fun in that little big town sense where you're like, you've heard of them maybe, or like you see them around, but you're like, what? I don't really know their story.
Yeah. I mean, even for like Penn's, I know of him. I don't personally know him, but really interested in, his family history.
Yep.
And, I mean, you could really tell that company cares about Rochester.
Absolutely.
So now when you see Elcor, which you typically do all around town, it's cool to actually put like a story to that. Mm-hmm. So
they're really intertwined in like the roots of just what's going on and the history of it.
Yeah. Yep. No doubt.
That's sweet. So jumping into things, I love to start and just go like, what is Powers Ventures? Because I know there's a lot going on. You guys are doing a lot, and just kind of wanted to hit on that quick.
Yeah. So it really starts with the restaurant that opened in '84. Moved a couple different locations, and then obviously we're in the existing one right now. So that's the restaurants. Then we have Canadian Honker Catering, and then also Pinnacle Catering, which are ran out of the same off-site facility. Mm-hmm. Canadian Honker Catering basically covers a wide range of everything. So boxed lunches, barbecue pork, to high-end elegance weddings.
Yep.
And Pinnacle we created probably about 4 or 5 years ago. That was kind of geared more towards business, mayo, mm-hmm. That kind of style. And then we also have the event center out by the airports,
Yep.
Which has actually been going for 15 years, which seems crazy
That
when you
is
start
crazy,
doing the math, And then we have the Hilton downtown, which is 2 floors, the third and fourth. That made it about 9 months, and then unfortunately COVID hit.
Yeah.
So that's just been like a caged animal, and we're ready to unleash that. So
I know it was exciting because I've been in there, and it was all new. It's all like we're just ready to go, and I was like, oh, time out.
I know
no one can do this yet.
Yeah. Yep. So we're definitely getting some traction, but
Yep.
This year's looking really good. So we're hoping that sticks and stays. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then we have two new ventures that we're adding with the Hubble House this year.
I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, so that we took over the first of the year, and redoing the kitchen, bar area, restrooms. But
what was kind of the draw for that?
It's really in our lane.
Yeah.
It's the Pappas family is something that, it's just been so iconic in this town that, even as a kid, like just going to Michael's and like just the feeling and everything, it's very similar to what we do too, you know, just old school recipes and customer service and family. And so it was really in our lane, and we're really honored to be able to continue that name. So we're excited about it. Yeah. Shooting for April, opening there.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. And then downtown is, we purchased the Dooley's building.
Yep.
So we're kind of in the final stages of design, still cleaning a few things up, and then hopefully the hammer gets going here soon. So
that's super exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things going on, but yeah, you gotta have a good group to manage all that, I suppose.
Yeah. One I did forget too. I always forget one. Is the Stone Barn too.
Oh, right. I even had that on my list.
Yeah. Yep.
No. And so, how long has that been around?
The barn itself is, well over 100 years. We purchased that, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years ago. And we were doing caterings before then there. But yeah, that's been an amazing project to just, we heavily invested into it, and it's been fun to watch it pay off.
It's a beautiful location and venue.
Yeah, it's extremely unique because it feels like country, but you're still, 5 minutes away from downtown. So the convenience side is a perfect match, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
And that was just another thing that was kind of just in the ballpark that felt comfortable, made sense to do.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one thing, you'd probably see with what we do is we really do stay in our lane, so to speak. We're pretty conservative on what we invest in, and it's paid off. So
that's the thing, though. Like you learn what you're good at, and you want to just continue doing that kind of thing. There's really no reason to go like way out in left field and try this out. If you're like, this works and this is what we're good at, stay true to that.
Yep, absolutely. So it's been fun.
Cool. So diving into the history now, did you grow up here?
Yep.
In Rochester?
Yep. So born and raised. I'm actually fifth generation Powers here. So
okay. So a bit of history too.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, my dad started the Canadian Hawker restaurant when he was 21, and that was back in '84. And I was born in '87, so obviously grew up in it.
Yep.
And yeah, it's been super fun on, just even being 8 years old and going in and busting tables on a busy holiday.
8 years old, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. We used to have legends at the athletic club. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't.
But yeah, that's kind of where at least I started was, I can't remember how many it sat, but they had this back room area, and we do, buffets on like Mother's Day and stuff. And I'd be the little 8-year-old with a bus tub and
grabbing your stuff.
Yeah, cleaning tables and everything. And I had a blast. I can honestly say I've always enjoyed it. So.
No, that's really cool. So kind of growing up, you were working in the businesses a bit. After high school, was there college, or what did that look like? Yeah,
so I went to Montana for a year. School was just never a thing for me. I just, the moment I got my high school diploma, I was just like, it's over. Done with school. Yeah, I made it, like it's done. And I don't know.
So then why Montana? And then why college then, if you were like just ready to be done?
Yeah, I think it was, probably a mix of like, that's what all my friends were doing and everything. And it's like, gee, what am I going to do?
Right.
So I had a couple buddies go out there, and we had just a blast. A lot of skiing. That's what my dad jokes. I got a degree in downhill skiing out there. That was about it. So yeah, I went out there for a year. It was kind of just a good time to just get away, and I'd recommend that to anybody coming out of high school.
Did you kind of figure out like what you wanted like to do in life, or just reflect, or like?
Yeah, what was interesting was, I guess I never really had this idea of like I was gonna do this.
Yep.
It just kind of organically happened. I don't know how to explain it, but Montana was just a good time of just being on your own, like being responsible to pay rent and like, you know, I had a job out there. I worked at Fuddruckers. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
So I still got the old hat. Worked at Fryer and everything. And yeah, it was really good experiences, you know.
So like out of high school, like you weren't like, I'm going to go work for the company in the family business. You weren't thinking that at all.
No, it really wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
But I also would say I'm not sure anything was on my radar at that point.
Right.
You know, like, I mean, obviously it's hard to picture an 18-year-old kid, and I'm sure there's some out there, but to actually like have that
Absolutely.
path and
I had no
mindset.
idea.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, I went to RCTC right out of high school and just for personal training. And after I was only there a semester. I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. And I was the same way. I was like, graduated. I'm like, oh, no school, no homework, like perfect. And did that. I was like, no, that's not it. And just kind of went into the workforce. But you really don't know at that age. There's endless opportunities, endless directions you can go. And you really do just need to like, you know, take that year and go, what's going on? You know, what do I like?
Yep.
You know?
And for me too, like I was super invested into hockey. That's what I did, like just breathed it every day. You know, so when that ended too, there was definitely like a huge void there, you know, and trying to figure out how to fill that was not easy.
Did you try to play in Montana?
I did, and I played out there, but it was definitely clear, like, okay, I'm not going to go to the NHL. Like, this isn't going to take me to the promised land, you know? So, you know, yeah, there was that piece of that. But what's really cool now that I look back, and I didn't even realize it at the time, is that the restaurant industry, there was a lot of similarities to hockey. So that really did fill that void for me, you know, of just the preparation, the working as a team, the intensity of it. All of that really made it so that part of my life was filled. So,
I mean, I can say I've worked in a lot of different industries, but I never worked for like a restaurant. I've you know, never been in the back and stuff like that. So I know it's intense though. Like there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world, but it's one of those professions where you just have to dive in. Like, and I'm sure a lot of other businesses are like that too, but you literally just have to grab the 50 pounds bag of onion, even though you have no idea how to cut an onion, and you just start cutting. You know, and you're going to screw up and you're going to cut your finger and you're going to do all of that, but it's just repetition to where all of a sudden a month later, like you're just whipping through them and flying. That to me in a nutshell is like the restaurant industry. So
Do it and like continue to just refine
the
process.
I mean, bartending's the same thing.
Yep.
You know, like I'm sure you've been to bars where you're looking at them like, how the hell did they do that? You know, and it's just because they did it so many times over and over, and they wanted to get better. So
I like it. So after your year at Montana, you're going, I don't think I'm going to do this, and you come back home, and then kind of what was next there?
Well, I was broke. So had to get a job quick,
Right.
you know. So, you know, I think within a week, I was in the kitchen at the Honker, and I started prepping, doing dishes, things like that. So I'd do that 5 days a week, and then on the sixth day, I'd go out to the event center and just help out there. You know, working out front, out back, all that. And I probably did that for a solid 2 years of just like that rotation, and then kind of moving into, you know, the line, and cooking on the line, bartending, hosting. I mean, it was just kind of like, you know, if they needed help in an area, like, you know, just,
Was Dad always kind of like, you're gonna work your way up and like learn every piece of this
100%
kind of thing,
Yep. And I'm so grateful for that. Because not only do you learn along the way, but you're also obviously gaining respect, you know, from the other employees. That was kind of like,
They feel like you deserve it then, not like you were just given it. Yep.
yeah, yep. And, especially like with our Hispanics in the kitchen, I mean, there were so many times where they're just down there laughing at me and like, and in a good way, but it was still, it was a lot of pressure but good pressure, pressure I enjoyed on like, I knew people were watching me,
Right.
and there probably was a fair amount of them that, were waiting for me to fail or to quit or whatever. And, I use that as motivation. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I talked about that last week too. It's just like, those factors in your life that, I think they change. Your motivations change, as your, path continues. But, you use those little things as like fuel, and you're like, watch, and so I like that.
Yeah.
And at that time, you're working there a few years. Were you like, okay, I'm going to continue to pursue this, or is this just like a job still at this point? Or are you like, I want to work here, work my way up, and, eventually, to where you're the president now? But like, was that the plan at that point?
No. And I would say, looking back, one quality that I'm super happy I had was I was never motivated by money. Mm-hmm. And I was never motivated by the idea of, having that job, so to speak, where, it's just a cake job and you're kind of just overseeing. And like, I didn't want anything to do with that.
What do you think that comes from?
Probably my family, I would assume, yeah, I mean, I would definitely say my parents are the same way, where it's not about, let's go get this deal done so we can, go buy that mansion down south and all that. I mean, especially in our industry, if money is the main source of what's motivating you, you're going to get burnt out quick, and you're going to get exposed quickly, because you really do have to love what you're doing every day, because it is a grind. So.
And you really just found like the love in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably really enjoyed kind of each step moving up and just really learning all these different aspects
Every
of the
minute
company.
of it. Yeah, I can honestly say that, like line cooking, for instance, to this day was one of my favorite things.
Did you ever jump back on the line?
Yeah, I do once in a while.
Great.
Yeah, it's actually a couple months ago. So Sunday morning at the Honker is like madness. Yeah, and it starts at like 8, and a lot of times it goes to like 2, and it literally just doesn't stop. So when you're in the kitchen, it's like that the printer just doesn't stop, and the printer, you want to throw out the window, and you've just had enough of it after you're done, because the tickets just keep coming. And but once again, like the intensity of that, right? And then all it takes is just one person to be off, and literally the whole thing gets messed up. That affects the waitresses, the hosts, the customers, everything. And once again, that pressure is like addicting.
How do you handle that kind of thing when someone, in that whole piece is just off?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the management situation, like you got to act quickly. There's no sitting around. Like at that point, you got holes in the boat and like the water's coming in. Like you better patch those quick. But a lot of that comes from our training too. On every manager that we have at the restaurant learns how to cook. And it definitely does take a special mindset to do that, and not everyone can do that. So we understand that. But you at least have to have the ability to go back there and to help get them out of the weeds, needed, so to speak. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when in the process, I guess, did you, did it kind of click that, okay, this is going to be something I want to continue to pursue? Mm-hmm. When did it turn from just like a job and enjoying it to like, okay, I want to be here long term?
Yeah. I think as soon as I started finding success is when it was like, okay, maybe this is.
And what do you mean by success?
I just mean like, the examples that I brought up before, like, the onions, like.
Oh, right.
Like once you get to that point where it's like, oh yeah, like I'm I'm halfway decent at this prepping thing,
Right.
and I can cook and I can bartend, and that was just gaining confidence. And then when it got to the point where I felt like I had a good grip on all of the different spots of it, then at least I had enough confidence to start managing, which that was probably one of the bigger challenges I've had in my life is being probably a 23-year-old kid going in, telling. I mean, we had servers there that remember me being a little 5-year-old kid coming in to eat. So now all of a sudden I'm your boss, and how do you deal with that? And yeah, it was quite the challenge.
And that was probably, again, where you did get to gain respect as you did, and you moved up. So at that point too, it's a little less weird, but
yeah,
it's still just weird just going in and you're younger and you're okay. I'm supposed to be running the show here and I got to help everyone. And
Yep. But I think the key to that though was, being willing to do anything and everything, and just kind of leading by example. So I'll give you a small example. If you have a waitress standing there and she's not being a team player and in the zone, like instead of going up and telling her that, you do it and then explain to her why you're doing it and how vital it is and all that, opposed to just being a dictator and telling them what to do, so to speak. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how was the transition then, as you just kept moving up, in management roles and things like that, was there times, you said you brought in the stone barn, 5 years ago, things like that. Like you've obviously been in a management role then. How did that look just with like family dynamics and like the business and because like you moved from like vice president first and like moving up, kind of get into like, as a manager, what did that look like for you? What were you doing? How are you like continuing to grow the company and things like that?
So I primarily just was at the Honker for probably 13 years.
Okay. Yeah.
I would go help with catering and things like that, but it wasn't like a management role, like, you know what I mean? Directing people. Like I was just there, and it was actually really nice to be able to get out of the management role and just be that frontline worker. But I'd say that transition probably happened maybe 4 years ago on just getting more, and it was kind of a slow process, but just getting more educated on like the other businesses and stuff.
Because at that time you're saying you're primarily just like focused on the Honker and not really looking at, and you'd help in and stuff like that, but it wasn't a focus on like kind of all the companies going on.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And then once that transition kind of started happening, and once again, it really was like organically.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a set date or like, but I think one thing, working in the restaurant as long as I did, like that machine never shuts off. Like we close on Christmas and that's it. So it's 7 days a week. We have workers show up there at 5:30 a.m. and the last one leaves at 11, and it just goes and goes and goes. So it's different in a way compared to the other businesses that we have on that side, but the amount of things that I learned on managing people, dealing with that beast, so to speak, and just all the moving parts. Like, I don't want to say it was easier, like starting to focus on these other places, but it was just so different. Like you can have literally, maybe 5 days, like nothing's going on. Like that was so unusual to me because it was like, as soon as you walked in that back door at the Honker,
You're
it was
busy
like,
until close.
bang, hey, dishwasher's broken, oven doesn't work. Before you even get downstairs, like it was always just something. So that intensity it was good. I'm glad I started in that opposed to going from here to try to learn that. So
how do you bring that same kind of intensity into management where you can just like, where it typically could be, a little bit more slow moving in the day to day. How can you kind of bring that into the company?
Yeah. One thing with this transition right now is obviously the new workforce that's coming up too. And like,
Right.
I would say I somewhat came from the old school mentality of like, you work,
Yeah.
And it really has shifted a lot. And I think there's positives to that, of having balance in life. But we also have to adjust to that, when we're hiring people and stuff, because if they can't handle that,
Right.
and
They just won't stay there long.
yeah, you're going to be dealing with a lot of turnover. And
So how do you think people are changing, or just the workforce in general? Younger generations coming up. What kind of things as like a management point? How do you see them changing?
Like I mentioned before, the pressure thing is interesting to me, and I'm still trying to figure that out on, can you teach somebody about that pressure is a privilege?
Yeah.
Or I think there's a disconnect there of associating stress with pressure, and from what I've gathered, like on this kind of new generation coming up, so to speak, is that that's somewhat blended, that they're associating those two like together,
Right.
where, definitely before that, it was like pressure is a privilege. Like you're lucky to have like that stress, so to speak, but it's good stress, and you thrive. And so,
I think sometimes as business owners too, like we add in, stress or like things just to like stay, moving forward, and like we'll do it to ourselves kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, we look at it as like, yeah, like let's do this so I stay like, on the grind, to say, but yeah, how do you change that from like, no, that's too much, I can't handle it, and use it as like fuel instead of like, the other way.
Yeah. And I think part of that is finding the balance between, is it too much stress? Is it too much? And then how are we going to, relieve some of that through systems or hiring or whatever it is? But yeah, it's been interesting a big thing I tell the managers is that, I don't know, you can't expect people to think like you. And I see that a lot with managers that, they're getting frustrated that
Because they don't get it. They're like, what do you,
yeah, like why doesn't this waitress get it? And it's like, well, you have to understand they don't think like you. You're in a different position. You got to think differently on how to motivate them, not just expect them to think like you. And it's the same thing with you and I too.
Yeah.
Like the people that work for you, like you can't expect them to have the exact same mentality that you have. I mean, you own it, you run it, you have stake in it, like.
And it's always different then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then throw in the age side of it too. If you have a 20-year-old kid compared to a 35-year-old that has 3 kids, that mindset is way different.
I think our motivations, like they lie in different places. I think someone made a comment at being somewhere, and they were like, generational, like right now, they're less worried about retirement and benefits and more about like, is my pay at a certain number, and can I get days off kind of thing. And there's that freedom aspect. And so it's like, it's interesting how just culture has like shifted what people are actually interested in. Like to our parents, retirement was huge. I mean, that's like, I'm going to work X amount of years and retire. And like, I'll have my, my pension or whatever it is, and that'll take care of me. And that's like what they did. And it's like, and obviously we want some kind of, nest egg or something at the end that's going to take care of us. But it's like, there just isn't that same focus, now. So and I think that's dictated too by like culture and what we're seeing, and easy, quick money, and everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, and things like that. And it's interesting just how society changes like the wants, and but
yeah. Well, the other part to that too is living in your means. I'd say that's like a really big one that I see. Where it's like, their car payments like almost as much as their rent, and it's like, oh man, what are you doing? But you just hope they learn from that, as they go. And yeah, it's definitely a different world.
Yeah, no, that's funny. What kind of speaking of like that kind of thing, do you think there's like a shift in, just maybe a generation, older generation, like they could just grind out these long weeks, and it was just like, work, come home, sleep, do it again. And is there more of a shift for like a balance, family life? I don't want to just work 24/7 because I have a family and I want to be able to focus on that too. Because like a lot of our parents, it was like, yep, you're just home with ma, and dad's gonna be gone most of the time. And you maybe get to see him on the weekend or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it has that. You think that side has shifted too?
Oh, definitely. And that's something that I've tried to shift personally too. I mean, I grew up with two parents that were in the business, and like, I mean, it just never stopped, and it was very normal for me.
Right.
But for my wife, for instance, like she didn't grow up in the hospitality industry, so it's to not be home on Thanksgiving. I mean, like I've never been home for Thanksgiving. Like, how weird is that? But it's really not to me. But so that adjustment when my wife and I got married and having kids and stuff, like that was pretty tough. Just kind of the realization, like, oh God, this isn't normal.
Right.
So yeah, finding the balance of that. I think COVID really changed that a lot, especially in our industry, to where I see our industry, it can be extremely addicting.
Yeah.
And you get addicted to, the pressure that I mentioned before, and just the rush, and it's really, really hard to shut it off. So trying to figure that out, like when I go home, it's a constant thing that I'm trying to learn. Like, for instance, my phone, like when I walk in, like I'm trying to get into the habit of just putting it up on the shelf, and like it's amazing. I'm a way better dad. Like, I'm more attentive. Like, if used incorrectly, those phones are bad deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, the balance thing, I think that's just an everyday, you have to just keep working on it. And I am by far not perfecting it, but.
And you think that really kind of shifted for you when you started your family? Because single you're probably just like, this is all I need to do,
Yeah.
And then you see like, okay, I have a wife and kid, I got a responsibility to them. Is that kind of where like it shifted for you?
Yeah. So I've actually been with my wife since I was 15.
Okay.
We got married when I was, I think, 22, 23, something like that. So, she's watched that. Like,
right. She's seen that then for a
yeah,
long time.
and she even watched that with me with like hockey. Like, I definitely didn't have a lot of balance on. I mean, obviously, I'm just a kid, but I mean, there'd be days where I'd go skate in the morning, lift after that, then go to an SAQ class and skate again that night. Like, it was, having that work ethic was important to me.
Yep.
But at the same time, like, you got to make sure that you don't go like too crazy, because too much of something isn't always good. So, she's definitely watched me like go through that. I think one positive when I look back now is how young I started. Right. So, I mean, I got 3 years of just solid experience in the workforce by the time most of my friends were getting out of college and just getting into it. So that was a big advantage. And then when we had our first kid, that was hard for me because I wasn't ready to pull myself more away from work, just from the standpoint of I still had a long ways to go, in my opinion, of learning and managing and all of that. And then by the time we had our second kid, she started staying at home, which made a big difference for me, on my schedule and everything. And that made it a lot easier. And then when we had our twins, it was well, obviously I can't put this all on you. How did you do this? So it was, for the last 5 years, I've been really trying to work on finding that balance and being home and all that. So
kind of learning that now, do you take that into consideration with employees and try to, I don't know, let them or have them focus on that kind of thing too? Or is it more, you're working on that and then they can do kind of their thing? And
yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise it goes back to the amount of turnover you're going to have. It's, not going to be good. So, that's definitely discussions we continue to have. The hard part for our business is, you essentially make money when other people are having fun. Like weddings, nonprofit galas, eating out on Sunday morning. You know what I mean? So
you've probably been to some fun events.
Yeah.
Pretty cool events. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been cool experiences for sure. And to see the back end of it has been really interesting. But yeah, you can only give so much in that, meaning we don't hire a lot of 9-to-5ers. It just is what it is.
Yep.
So.
So what other things would you say that you just, through the experience of going through this process, doing these different jobs, going from doing it to managing it, and even up from there, what have you learned through that process, that you could even give advice for somebody else?
I think the biggest thing is love the process, jump in the process. So I'll give you an example on this. When we used to do the caterings at the Civic Center, we did this event at Argent Society through Mayo. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I haven't heard it.
So, and I'm not quite sure what the structure was on Mayo, but it was if you were there for 20 years, they put a dinner on for you, and it was every 5 years you can go, whatever. So it was a sit-down meal. I want to say it was around 3,000 people.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and this is you literally open the doors and they all come sit down at once. And then bang, you bring the salads and you clear and then so with that, going back to enjoying the process, is that when you get done, you literally have bus tubs of dirty dishes down the hall that you can't even see the end of it, and we used to just turn on AC/DC, roll the sleeves up, get your hands in the sink, and you literally would do that for hours. But there's two different ways you can look at that. You can say, this sucks, and I really don't want to do this. I've been here all day, blah, 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 just crying about it. Or you can enjoy it.
Right.
And that's what we all did. It was just that environment of obviously you felt really good because you accomplished it. And, now don't be a whiner. Let's finish it off right. And I'll tell you, when you got done and you're sitting on the milk crate, that first sip of beer, man, you earned it, and it tasted damn good.
How do you think company culture plays into that attitude?
I think that's probably one of the many amazing things that my dad did. It was building that culture, and it wasn't the sense of it wasn't so scripted. It was real, And what I mean by that is it's not like he was like reading books, figuring out how to like build culture and like all that. Like it literally was just like, okay, the owner's over there like busting his ass in the dish pit. Like I should probably get in there and do that too. Like, and that was just how it got built to where it did. Like just the respect level of not only, the employees had for him, but then vice versa, to where it was like, an employee would lose their dad or whatever. And, just the way that, you come together at that time, like just like a family, and you take care of them and people don't forget that. And so once again, a lot of it was just like organically built that way. So
what's one of like the most fun events that you guys have done?
Well, I got to be careful talking about Mayo because I know they're kind of, like don't share too much kind of thing. But, we did some pretty cool ones on, like, I think it was it 150? Their 150th anniversary with Mayo. That one was really cool. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. Just like retirement parties, for Dr. Noseworthy and things like that. Like, I always loved, doing the serve, and then once you, clean off the tables and stuff, like, we going back, and then they do their program. Well, I'd secretly sneak out there and like hide behind a pole, and like, so to have that ability to like listen to
and experience some of that.
Yeah, and have Dr. Noseworthy get up there and like listen to his speech. And I mean, a guy like that's brilliant. So for me to be able to listen to him for half an hour, like that's pretty special.
That's fun.
Yeah. So, nothing off the top of my head is kind of coming to me on.
It's a lot of them.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Where do you see like or even before that, like, so you're the president, what does like your day to day look like? Like, what do you doing and like focusing on like now, because we dove into like a lot of like what you have done. Like, what are you kind of currently getting to do now?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I got this position. I can't remember I think it was actually during COVID.
Right.
So, that was kind of interesting. Like a lot of people joke, like, oh, that was really nice of your dad, like, handing the reins over during a pandemic. But it actually really worked into my favor because it was a perfect time to bring change. And I didn't get the resistance that I probably normally would have before that. And the change I'm kind of talking about is, one thing we're really good at is customer service and our quality of food. Like, can you always build on that? Yes, but it's not something that I had to come in and like fix or focus on, or, so to have that foundation was huge. So really what I'm primarily focused on right now is rebuilding. So, we've never had much of a turnover issue. We've just always had, managers that would be with us for 12, 15, 20 years. And COVID really, really rocked that for us.
Why do you think that was?
I think it kind of goes back to the balance, of like, you take somebody, for instance, that's been catering for 15, 20 years, like, not only just the physical side of what that does to your body, but also the mental, and going back to like, you can't shut it off. So I think that was probably the biggest part of that, but so to give you an idea, I think we had 25 leadership positions, we'll call them, before COVID, and 10 of those I had to focus on replacing, in the last 2 years. Yeah. So, not only that, but then also trying to deal with this just constant change of, the quarantining and how many people you can have in a facility, and mask on, mask off, temperature logging, like it just was crazy. Like never ended. And it was like you'd sit down and have a meeting and run through all this, and literally like a week later, that meeting was a complete waste of time. You know?
All right, now everything has changed. This is how we're going to
Yeah.
proceed now.
Yep. And so that was really difficult. So definitely in the beginning, it was more of just like making so the ship doesn't sink, you know, and now it's definitely, I've been focused more on not only rebuilding the team, but then also really pushing to think differently now, you know, so the way we're billing, the way we're, you know, doing new menus, just a lot of processes, all that kind of stuff, like just challenging everybody to just think differently. Like, yes, we've done that in the past and it worked. Does it still make sense now? And if it does, can we make it better? If it doesn't, what are the other options? You know, so I would say that's probably 80% of what I'm doing right now.
Did COVID allow you to like obviously there was a lot of headache and change and stuff like that, and tons of new stuff thrown at you guys, but was there an element of like it also slowed you down so you could kind of like look at things without everything running a million miles an hour, you know? So it
100%.
did it kind of help in that sense, but you know, obviously it brought a lot of, you know, inconveniences and how things changed, but did it give you like that time where you can go, okay, whew, I can look at everything now and we can kind of refine this?
Yep. A company like ours definitely needed a pause button, you know, because basically the way the seasons go, so to speak, is that typically in April is when it really gets going. And then fall time's actually our busiest time out of all of them. So, you know, you essentially have like January, February of slow periods. March, it starts coming and then it goes. The issue is, you know, you're so tired and burnt out that January and February, it's like really hard to get motivated and to push change and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So there was definitely like a rest period there, but the big thing with that is, yeah, like having that foresight and working on change and all of that, like we just didn't have the time to do it. And the other part too to that is just the way the system is set up too on being willing to invest in that side of it. Meaning like, you know, my main goal is in the next couple of years to like have that team that's all they do.
Right.
It is think forward and, you know, come up with new concepts and really just stay on top of it instead of feeling like you're constantly just like running and, you know, you're behind, so to speak. So, you know, once again, a lot of what I'm doing right now is like behind the scenes, like a customer wouldn't notice it.
Right.
But yeah, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Do you kind of like the strategy of, you know, what you get to do now, you know, where it might be more high level, it might be more behind the scenes, and you might not be working as much with your hands and more your head now, but like, does that get you excited on like the strategicness and like, I don't know how data driven you are and stuff like that, but you know, when you get to kind of like look at that high level, what's going on and how can we refine it, that's got to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, it is. And the good news is too, like I've always loved problem solving. Like that's definitely been a passion of mine. And so this is almost like like it was meant to be this way, you know, for me in a way, like to go through COVID and to have to deal with so many problem solving scenarios. And yeah, that's been a lot of fun for sure. I wish there was more of a mix of, you know, like the manual labor side, so to speak. And I'm hoping one day I can figure that out on kind of how I can balance that. Till then, you know, I'll just keep working on my lawn and, you know, enjoy hauling rocks and all that. But yeah, it's definitely like where my focus has to be on is that more admin or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, I was reading a book and I forget the title of it, but the guy was basically talking to a gal that was a cupcake maker, loved it, and she was super passionate about it, fantastic at it. All of our friends said, start a business. She started a business. It grew. She's never making cupcakes anymore, and that was her original passion. And like it kind of like plateaued, so she brings this business coach in. What's going on? And basically, she realized and figured out that like you're not doing what you love anymore. You're like doing the ownership part of it and like the management part of it, and it just really goes to show like you really, like maybe I got into video because I had a passion in video, and but I don't even really get to do it anymore. I'm not on the shoots, and if I do, it's fun, but it's not like you're holding the camera all the time and doing that. You're more talking with clients and stuff like that. But it's just interesting to see like progression of business, especially if you were doing something that you were passionate at, that you kind of had to let that go to do this because no one else can do this. And you're like, so it's just been kind of an interesting realization, even for like myself, of you don't always get to do that anymore because you're the owner, you're the president, whatever it is, and you have an obligation to do this stuff now to take care of, the company.
Mm-hmm. No, that is a perfect way to put it on like, yeah, how difficult that is. And once again, for me to like go through that transition, and I feel like in a way I'm still going through that, but now, I'm looking at somebody like my sister that needs to take that, and she knows that, and we've had a lot of discussions on it.
Yep.
But it scares the crap out of you.
Yeah.
Because you've been, controlling this thing, you've perfected it in a way, you know what I mean? Like it just comes natural now.
Yep.
And now to say you essentially have to work yourself out of that job, is really difficult to get through to people. And I get it, because it was hard for me too, but really if you want to grow, you have to.
Right.
So
and that's basically, the end of the story was, do you come to the realization that your passion's in cupcake making, you go work for somebody else and you do that? Or are you really passionate about just being a business owner and transitioning kind of thing? And it's really just, it's eye-opening to go, what do you really want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, you do have a responsibility if you're going to continue doing that. And, but if not, and you just really enjoy this and you're passionate about that, perfect. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to work for somebody else and you get to do that and you get to enjoy it.
Yep.
But it's just been, and I get it at a smaller scale, obviously, and just growing the company that we're in. But it's an interesting realization that kind of comes about.
Yeah. Well, I think what's key too on that is trying to figure out what's gonna, I don't want to say motivate you, but for me, like I found a passion in watching people like grow, you know, and to me, like if you can change your mindset to where it's like, all right, I'm gonna invest so much time into like, these two to start taking over my role, like, seeing that as like entertaining, one, like, it's fun. It's fun to watch him like
develop.
And all of a sudden get to that point. And then, so really to me, that's like just working on a shift of mindset of, watching it and enjoying it and being in it, but not being in it. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird thing.
How can you find that same feeling that you had before in a new position, in a new role?
Yep.
And developing people is huge.
Mm-hmm.
You know that even more than I do as a bigger team, of how important your employees are and how big of a deal they are. And, so yeah, that's great. So kind of shifting now, I want to look into future of the company. You're stepping in this new role, since COVID. You've been doing it now for a little bit. How does kind of like the future look, for Powers Ventures and like what you guys want to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's why I'm spending so much time and energy right now into trying to really refine the infrastructure, so to speak, and really set up systems that are going to allow us to continue to grow. You know, adding 2 new restaurants this year like that's going to put a lot of stress, you know, on the overall system itself. And,
Right.
you know, so continuing to monitor that to figure out, you know, where the stress points are, how you can streamline that better. So really the goal has always been to grow. And, you know, my dad told me this, and Gus Schifoli told him this, and you're either growing or you're dying. And that never really made sense to me that much. Like I get it, like you grow, but I didn't get the dying part
Right.
until I really started diving into like the numbers, so to speak. And like, I mean, especially when you look at the last 5 years, let's just say, and how much things have changed, and, you know, just the costs of everything and all that. Like, if you just continue down this path, like,
It just dwindles out.
yeah, it's just going to be a slow death. You know, eventually it's almost like you're running,
Right.
and it's like the costs are like behind you. And if you stop running, like you're just going to get gobbled up by it, you know? So, yeah, growth is definitely in the future. What that is, I mean, I don't have any specific examples or anything. I think what's key for me is that when the opportunity comes,
That you're ready.
yeah, you know, that our system allows that, if it makes sense to bring it in, is really, you know, the main goal right now.
Yeah, there's kind of that element of like slowing down to speed up. You know, and it sounds like you're almost in that where it's like we're slowing down to figure out what we need to do so we can speed up in the long term.
Yep.
And have it run like a machine.
Yep. Exactly.
And how much are you kind of in the, you know, are you more right now like in that like run operations? You got the whole, you know, all different pillars of the company. You know, how much of like the investing side do you look at? You know, you picked up 2 new restaurants. You know, how much are you involved in that process, and kind of continuing to look, you know, for those deals that just come out and are opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, we've always been really conservative on what we, you know, continue to bring in, so to speak, or, you know, to build. And the reason why we're doing that is it's extremely important for us to obviously protect what we have.
Correct.
And of course, the most important, the people that are, you know, working in our family, you know, all the employees, like we need to make sure that we don't make some stupid investment and it affects them.
Jeopardize them.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a paranoia that we have. So the good news with that is what that does is, I mean, if you look at something like the Hubble House, we spent a tremendous amount of time just studying that, and, you know, just a million questions and diving into the numbers and, you know, watching the market out there, especially because it's outside of Rochester, you know, so that piece was definitely different for us. But really just getting to the point where we can all just look around the table and be like, all right, this makes sense, you know, and not have that reckless, like, oh, they're selling it for that. Like, great. Okay. Yep. All right.
Yep.
Where do we
That
sign?
dollar looks good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and especially on a project like that I definitely don't want to be responsible for the one that screws it up and the Hubble House is no longer.
Right.
You know, so the pressure of that was definitely high, weighing in on that scenario.
Does your dad, is he still involved in like that side of it?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
You know, maybe less of like the operations of stuff, but more still looking at, you know, investment, still big picture, things like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's never going to quit. I hope he never does.
Yeah.
Him and I have always worked extremely well together.
Has he kind of been like a cool mentor, just growing up with and
Yeah.
learning from?
Yeah, I don't know about cool, but you know, yeah, he's pushed me really hard, but I think he figured out that I need that I enjoy that.
Yep.
You know, and it's really interesting because, in my opinion, him and I make a really good team because his strengths are ideas. and throwing 100 things at a wall and just seeing what sticks. Where I actually really enjoy the process of figuring out, does it make sense? And then if it does, like, how do you implement it? And then how do you train it to make sure it sticks? That I figured out is kind of my forte, and that's his forte, and it's a good mix.
You kind of need it if you want to really grow. And there's a book called Rocket Fuel. I don't know if you've read that or not, but it talks about a VI combo, a visionary and an integrator. And it just says, like, it breaks down all these large companies, and there was, like, always two people that had, like, those same two traits.
Sure.
And they just, you play off each other, and you keep growing.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, but it's also good to, like, know what your strengths are, and to, like, where you bring someone in to supplement that.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. No, it's so, like I said, with him, it's I don't want him to go away. It's people always joke about that. The old man finally got out of the way, and it's like, yes, he has in a certain way,
right,
which I really appreciate his confidence, in me on that. But I think he also figured out too, like, you can't hold my hand, because eventually, I'm going to have to be ready to do it without you. I mean, that's just life.
Yep.
So
he probably enjoys it too. Just continuing to do it,
Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, to have a family business and then to have, your 3 kids involved with it too. I mean, that's definitely a blessing. And then when my grandma was alive too, like, having the ability to see her, so regularly, and what I learned from her and everything. I mean, what a gift, so.
What about your kids? Do you feel like, obviously, they can go wherever, but is there any excitement of, like, continuing that and being in the company and, like, the family business?
Yeah. It's interesting because I do think about that a lot.
Yeah.
But I also try to, like, ground myself to where it's like, I don't want to by any means, like, force them to do this, obviously.
Right.
And I want it to happen organically, because it goes back to what I said before. Like, in this industry, if your heart's not in it, like, good luck,
You get burnt out.
Yeah, and I don't want to put my kids in that situation either, where they're just doing it for me, or they're doing it for some other reason other than actually, like, loving it. So I know it scares the crap out of my wife on, the kids getting involved and stuff, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Well, when they turn 8, they start busting.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I know they definitely want to get, like, more involved with it and stuff. I mean, they're still young, but it'll be interesting. The other part to that too that I think a lot about is, like, okay, what happens if none of them doesn't want anything to do with it? Like, then what?
Yep.
Like, I don't want to sell it. You know what I mean? But it's like, I also don't want to do it till I'm 90.
Oh.
So
that's interesting. I've never thought about that with the kid situation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Right.
It's in God's hands, not mine. So
I like it. Well, sweet, Nick. This has been great.
Yeah.
It's been fun chatting and learning more about you and Powers Ventures and what's going on. And I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like I said, you've been doing a great job, and it's an honor to come on.
Awesome.
Glad I got the first one out of the way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Come back for the second one next year.
That's happy hour, right? So, yeah.
That'll be the happy hour one.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I'm in.
Well, sweet. Thank you to the listeners, and I hope you continue to learn something, stay motivated, and we'll see you guys on the next one.